Well, that's the news that's buzzing on Startup Central, and we brought to you in Fatafat style. But let's take a little bit of a deep breath and welcome in our guest for the show. Rajeev Suri is joining us. He's the managing partner of Orios Venture Partners on Startup Central. A very warm welcome to you, Rajeev. Let me tell you a little bit about Orios. It's a VC that has had a seed stage, I should say. It's a bit of a tongue twister. This is an acceleration program that they've had for 2 years. It's called Misfits, and it provides mentorship and funding to early stage ventures. The kind of funds that are available are $500,000 to $1.5 million. So that's the kind of seed fund that they're offering as part of Misfits. And Rajeev, you started this 2 years ago in 2018. Over 20 startups already have graduated, and the third cohort of Misfits has graduated just a month ago. It isn't too long ago. So if you can tell us briefly about the ones that have just graduated, because these are very difficult times, and this is the first graduation, the batch of 2020, as we are seeing, as difficult at the time as it is. Tell us about the kind of disruptive abilities that they bring to the table with the kind of businesses that you've been mentoring.
Hey Vikram, thank you so much. Great to be on the show and look forward to having an interesting conversation with you folks. I'm presuming that my audio and everything and the technology is working out well for us right now. Fair enough? Hello?
Absolutely, it's going very well.
Sorry, okay.
I can hear you loud and clear. Tell us a little bit more about the graduates. Yes.
Absolutely. So we at Orios have been investing in the venture, in startups for a very long time now. We have 3 unicorns in our portfolio. The first one is Ola, where we put in our money. We were one of the first investors into Ola in 2008. And then after that, we've had Dhruva, which is a cloud storage company that's actually based out of the US. And now we are seeing a third unicorn emerge, and this is PharmEasy, which is one of our recent funded companies. PharmEasy is now gone on to sort of acquire MedLife, or is in the process of acquiring MedLife. All this is public news, by the way. Acquire MedLife and sort of create a 70% behemoth in the e-pharmacy space. So those are the kind of companies that we have. So to your question about the Misfits program, so we tend to focus on a small group of startups. We invest in them. This is our third fund. We have got about 50, 60 startups that we've already been doing. We have started doing this since 2014 odd. And, in this fund, we try and get these companies, we put them through a rigorous process of, aligning with what we want to try and get them towards, which is basically the product market fit, which is a very interesting term in the venture capital world. And once they reach that, they become eligible for much higher funding rounds, and that's where they are. So some of these have graduated, and hopefully many of them will make unicorns as we go forward in the future. I think the thing that has changed also about the program, and I think that's something that we are seeing across the ecosystem, is basically what has happened in the last few months, whether you call it lockdown, whether you call it COVID, is that the Indian consumer was always accelerating towards a digital path. But what these last few months have done is it's accelerated a 4-year journey and compressed into a 4-month phase. So right now you come out of this looking at the consumer being a lot more digital, and hence a lot of digital things have started to just shoot up in terms of consumption. You're seeing this across a range of things, whether you talk about the kind of startups that I've just spoken about, whether you talk about gaming, which I think is a category that we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion around, or whether you talk about anything digital really. So anything that has that ability to leverage itself on the digital world is now poised to sort of grow much faster. And that, I think, is showing not just in India, it's showing across the world. But India is a special case because we've got 3 or 4 things that are working for us. That's the reason why I think we are going to accelerate faster than the rest of the world in this. That's something that I'm very optimistic about as we go along into the future. Thank you, Vikram.
Rajeev, since you've talked about such a huge range of businesses that could qualify at this point in time, of course, the concentration would be in the digital universe. That's a no-brainer. But talking about the RBI governor, and he's talked about food processing as a sunrise business to be in at this point in time. How much traction have you seen in that line as far as startups are concerned, and any disruptions that are happening over there? Because you're seeing the potential, whether it's in milk production, whether it's in bakeries, but as far as a holistic approach to food processing from the startup universe, especially when these startups are looking for seed capital, have you seen enough happening there?
There's a lot of action. I mean, this is India, right, Vikram, and we've got action in pretty much everything because we are a nation of 1.3 billion people. So I suppose you touch any sector, you touch anything in the map. It's a little bit like the map, and you touch anything, there'll be some action that will be happening there. Ye hamari Bharat ka kuch, that's a khasiyat of our nation as we sort of look at it. So on the specific sector that you mentioned, we've actually seen quite a bit of traction. One of our companies, a rockstar company, in fact, in our portfolio is a company called Country Delight. So Country Delight is in the business of delivering milk. It has its own brand. It sits in 4 or 5 cities across the country right now, and it's sort of grown through the COVID times. Because people were sitting at home, and India is a very interesting market for a lot of these agri commodities. If you take milk as a business, again, I want to emphasize that India produces about 1/4 of the world's milk, about 22% of the world's milk, and it consumes most of it, as milk itself. So unlike the Western world, which tends to process these things, India takes milk and consumes it as a whole. So you get dahi, everything else that you're able to do, you make it at home. So that's one of the interesting khasiyats of the Indian market. So this makes for a $60-70 billion business. And there are very few products that actually go into the household every day. And every household requires it, right? 25 crores homes in the country. And those 25 crore homes need to have this milk coming in. That's, I think, the reason why this is growing. And I think that's something that continues to take off. As I told you, Country Delight is now going from strength to strength. They are now well on their way to raise the next fundraise that's likely to happen anytime soon. Keep your eyes peeled for the next introduction that's going to come out, and next fundraise in news that's going to come out. So that's definitely a sector that is very hot, and we see a lot of action there. Absolutely.
As part of your mentorship, Rajeev, I also wanted to understand when you're talking about hand-holding these businesses through the period that they're with you, which are the areas that they require maximum hand-holding?
So that's look, one thing one has to be clear is that the startups and the entrepreneurs are the rock stars. They absolutely make the game work, and the storyline is absolutely centric to what they have done or what their business ideas or thoughts are. But there are lots of things that, the market is a big market. There's a lot of stuff to be done. There's a lot of sectors that we need to do. And that's where some of our experience of doing things actually tries to help them, right? So if you look at my own background, I was with Jio as a CMO. I was with Infosys as the head of marketing based out of the UK. And I've also myself done a startup, right? So all of those experiences, I started my life with Colgate Palmolive, doing distribution and marketing in rural markets. So all of these experiences sort of come together, and I'm able to actually sort of hopefully add a little bit more of advisory value or thoughts in terms of what I do with these startups. So the intent is to try and help them get aggressively ahead and actively ahead on the front. So that's broadly what we try and do in terms of what the storyline is. In terms of the specifics of where the key things are, let us think about that interesting beast that I spoke about called the PMF, right? The product market fit. The product market fit essentially has got 3 components to it. 1, do the customers love your product? 2, are the customers coming back to your product on a regular basis? And 3, are they willing to pay money for it? These are the 3 things that constitute what you call a PMF. First and the second typically tends to be easier for you to get right because you've got a great idea. That idea has also gone to a particular level and it's able to do something. But the third thing is where emerging markets like India find it a little bit more difficult to get because the consumer propensity to pay money generally tends to be a little bit more difficult, right? Hum thode kitna deti hai, I'm sure you remember that ad from Maruti, which I think is very, very ingrained Indian behavior. And that means basically that there's a lot of thought process before money is put out in front of anybody that's coming out. And that's, I think, where the difficulty generally tends to be. Once we get them over that hump, then it's all smooth sailing, then they take off. That's the way the startup ecosystem. Of the 3 things, I think the part that matters the most is how do you make that kitna deti hai argument work for them, if that makes sense.
Well, this certainly puts things in perspective, and I know that you've got the likes of Sequoia Capital, Kalaari, Accel, Waterbridge. They're all into seed stage funding, and they've all been part of the presentations that were made from the last cohort of Misfits. We wish you great luck going ahead. I wish we had more time, but we're always running short of time talking to great minds like you. Rajeev, thanks very much for joining us on this edition of Startup Central. We hope to see you soon. For the moment, a very quick breather. We'll be back with much more action, many more startups, so much to discuss. Do stay with us.